Okay. Well, Joe, so welcome to the podcast. So what is Mainly Ministries?
Well, we're an organisation who helps support churches, church plants, missional communities, and Christian schools to connect into their community, specifically with families who have preschoolers, so babies through not yet going to school age children. And that looks different in different countries. In my home country of Aotearoa, New Zealand, it is children go to school at 5.
Okay.
In other countries, they go to nursery, like the UK, they go to nursery when they're 3, and then they go to school when they're 4. So here in Australia, where I'm living, children generally don't go until they've turned 5 or even closer till they're 6.
Okay.
And so the way we are supporting the local church is
Mhm.
to supply them with a method of connecting with families who have preschoolers.
Mm.
One of them is mainly music, one is mainly play, and one is mainly babies.
Okay.
And that those three frameworks of ministry are used by the local church and supported by us,
Mm.
resourced by us. They're well-known brands, particularly in Australia and New Zealand. They're getting more well-known in the UK.
Okay.
And later this year, we're hoping to start the process of entering into Canada.
Hmm. Wow, that's awesome. So, uh, do you feel like a calling to some ministry? Is that why you started this?
No, it's not why I started this. I actually started this because my passion is for evangelism and families,
Hmm.
and I have a background in music. And when my daughter was not quite 2, I'd been taking her to a music group in a community setting, and they
Hmm.
were about to change the way that they were operating. I thought this is a chance for us to do this at church as a
Hmm.
way of connecting our church with the local community. And I wasn't a great fan of playgroups. I like things with purpose, and the idea of the music session has a bit more purpose.
Hmm.
We did. I stood back and looked at what we were already going to and thought, how can we make this better? How can we improve this?
Hmm.
Which we did. And my missiology has improved over the years. And
Okay.
I've done a theology degree. And so I have much more understanding about mission and even about the process of witnessing and evangelism.
So, how did you get started? Before starting Mainly Ministries, what was were you working or?
Yeah, so back then I was working 3 days a week. Oh my
Okay.
goodness, you're really stretching my. I'm a futurist. I'm not very good at a story. History is I was partially stay at home and partially part time working,
Okay.
and I am an entrepreneur, and so I like things that are new, and so it started quite organically, just in my home church,
Mm.
and back in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and because I was part of a Baptist church, and Baptist churches were very outward focused, it became
Mm.
very easy to promote it within the Baptist denomination, and
Okay.
then see it grow, and here we are today.
Yeah. Uh, so what was the process of starting your nonprofit?
Okay, so initially it just started as a ministry of our local church.
Okay.
And our pastor at the time was very keen to support and resource and birth
Mm.
new ministries that people felt was laying on their heart. Okay, so
Mm.
he didn't want to require us to look like or do like certain ways. He really was a permission giver.
Mm.
And when I came to him and suggested that this might be a thing, He actually gave me a cassette tape. Remember those things? Because
Yeah.
this is 34 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And it was an interview with a woman who had started something called Project Esther down in one of the very large Baptist churches, or it's one of three very large Baptist churches in New Zealand. It was in the South Island, and that helped me get some thoughts around what we might do.
Mm.
And then we just made it happen. I'm a very make it happen sort of person, and so I
Mhm.
don't tend to get paralysis by analysis, and
Yeah.
so consequently, we just made it happen. And then it was year two
Mm.
when my friend who had participated with the startup, she and her
Mhm.
husband moved back down to the South Island,
Mm.
so it required some more thought about how were we going to bring people on board to be the team, because pretty
Mhm.
much the two of us had run it on our own.
Yeah.
And then she decided she wanted to start one down in her home church,
Mm.
down in Ototahi Christchurch.
Okay.
So, and then that sort of opened my mind to this might be something that other churches could do,
Mm.
never realizing that God had in store what
Mm.
has unfolded.
That's amazing. How many groups do you guys have now?
We've got 700 worldwide. So
That's
mostly Australia, New Zealand, Scotland, England, and then we've got a smattering of groups in the US, two
mm.
in Canada, one in Hong Kong, one in
Mm.
Lebanon, one in a Middle Eastern country.
Mm.
Yeah, pre-pandemic, we were slightly bigger.
That's quite amazing. Wow. Uh, so how did you feel at the time and now about your pastor's leadership style of just letting you guys um, figure it out?
Yeah, I think pastors are wonderful when they do that.
Mm.
What was missing was the loop back.
Mm.
Like, what are you thinking? What are you planning on doing? How can I keep you accountable to that? How can we put more resources your way? I
Mm.
don't remember a lot of that sort of interaction. And I
Right.
think what I notice about mainly music groups, so our model is very like a franchise, but we
Mm.
don't have the sort of money that franchises normally have.
Mm.
So there's a lot of trust in holding on to the brand at local church level.
Mm.
What I notice is that because church leaders don't hold people accountable,
Mm.
then when something isn't quite going right, they don't
Mm.
feel like they've got the permission to say, shape up or ship out, because at the end of the day, they're not only representing the Mainly Music brand or the Mainly Play or the Mainly Babies, they're representing brand church.
Right.
And so people that want to set up an empire or are say, oh, I want to do this as a team, but actually they just want to do it themselves with some minions running around. Pastor needs to actually have some preset relationships, accountabilities, expectation of how they want this thing to look,
Mm.
so that they can speak in.
Yeah. Okay. So if someone wants to start a group, what does that look like?
Okay, well, first of all, they would come to us to find out about us, and so
Okay.
that we could find out about them, because
Mm.
we want it to be a connected relationship. Connection is one of our values.
Mm.
We have a statement of faith, and some churches think that we're a bit fundamental. Well, we're not actually. It's just we believe the Bible's true, and we believe in heaven and hell, although people don't like that word anymore. Hell. So we believe in the separation of people at the end of time, of Jesus returning, of the Holy Spirit,
Hmm.
of the role of family in society.
Hmm.
So a church needs to know all that first, because otherwise they don't have to say, oh, that's exactly our statement of faith, but
Mm-hmm.
they have to be passionate about Jesus.
Right.
And they have to believe that the Bible is true, cover to
Mm.
cover, that there are bits that you don't pull out just because it's inconvenient.
Right.
Otherwise, the material we are providing isn't going to fit with their theology. And then that's going to be really annoying. So once we've had that conversation of who are you? What do you want to achieve? Like this is more than, oh, we happen to have some people available on a Tuesday and the building's available on Tuesday. It
Mm.
has to be that you want to be revealing Jesus. So then we would send the application form.
Mm-hmm.
So what we say is that our sweet spot is that together with a community of faith,
Mm-hmm.
we help them create a joy-filled community of belonging where Jesus can be revealed.
Yeah.
So the application phase is exploring what that partner will look like, that community of faith will look like. And it's them exploring, why do they really want to do this?
Mm.
They need to go and look at a Mainly music or a Mainly play. Now,
Mm.
if they were going to do that in Canada or the USA, for example,
Mm-hmm.
we would give them some footage of an actual session, because you can't
Okay.
just go down the road. In New Zealand, you can pretty much drive half an hour, and there will be a Mainly music nearby.
Wow.
And not, Australia's a big place, but there it's pretty easy to get to that in the UK and Australia as well.
Mm-hmm.
Then they send the application form in
Mm-hmm.
with some money. So that's around about 300. It's about 400 Australian dollars
Okay.
for the US and Canada. It's 180 pounds in the UK. It's 399 in New Zealand and 385 at the moment in Australia.
Okay.
So that's a once-off cost. So we
Mm.
go through the application, double check it's what we're expecting. That there are you need minimum of 4 team members. This is done by a team.
Mm.
So we're checking that off as well. We're
Okay.
checking that the church leader actually wants this to happen. We got caught in the past with someone wanting to start, or a number of times this has happened, someone wanting to start a Mainly music. The church leadership say, actually, no, they just go ahead anyway. And it all just falls over. So it's better that
Mm.
everybody knows, because at the end of the day, the stakeholder is the church leadership, the
Mm.
principal of the Christian school, the person leading the missional community or the church plant.
Okay.
Then they get the setup pack, they get the training material, which is online and written material.
Mm.
There's a to-do list, there's a shopping list, there's everything we can possibly think of to make this as easy as possible.
Mm.
And then the team starts practicing.
Mm.
And when they've decided, yeah, we reckon we've got this sorted, they use their phone and film it. And that only goes to the coach who is going to sign them off. That coach watches that footage to see how they've interpreted the training, then
Mm-hmm.
has a online meeting with the team. They talk about the values, they talk about the purpose, they congratulate them on what they've achieved. They point out a few things that might be sort of road bumps, speed bumps, if
Mm-hmm.
they continue that way.
Yeah.
And then they say, welcome to Mainly Ministries.
Mm.
We put the details on the Mainly Music website. We've got a map of the world where you can see where all the Mainly Music groups are.
Yeah.
We help promote them to pediatricians, to
Mm.
medical people, to speech pathologists,
Mm.
to early childhood centres, all
Yeah.
sorts of people, because we want to
Okay.
see them flourish. And then
So,
there is the relationship that we have ongoing.
so I don't know how it works in other places, but at least in the U.S., there's like a very strong emphasis on separation of church and state, and oftentimes hospitals are more on the state side. Um, so, how does that work with communicating with pediatricians, like in the U.S., for example?
Well, they're providing services, so it's not really a church and state issue.
Okay.
We're offering a service to people that are in need. They're offering a service to people that are in need.
Okay.
So they would pediatricians and medical people see what we're offering is social. Well, what the local church, let's just narrow it down to our local church, is
Hmm.
offering social inclusion. Now we
Okay.
know that anxiety occurs because of social isolation,
Right.
and when people have babies, that's a time when they can become very socially isolated.
Okay.
We're also offering school readiness skills. So they know, particularly medical people and educational people, know that this is going to benefit the child, but it's also going to benefit the family because the family are going, I am my child's first teacher. And Mainly
Hmm.
Music is telling me this, and I'm going to step up.
Hmm. Okay. Um, so just trying to make sure I like fully understand how the whole thing works here. Um,
There's no dumb question, Elliott. There is no dumb question. Please ask away.
so these groups end up being like meeting throughout the week, potentially on Sundays, but throughout the week for
No,
like an hour
more just once a week during the school term or the school
during the school.
semester. You
Okay.
would in your terminology.
Okay. So during the school semester, once a week for like an hour at a time.
About an hour and a half, most of them are. So half an hour of music or story and craft, and
Okay.
then an hour that we call eat, play, chat because it's just that the children get something to eat and then they play with toys.
Hmm.
The relationally connected adults get something to eat and then they chat, and that's where the
Okay.
social inclusion occurs.
Um, is there like a minimum and maximum size for a group?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, actually. The The minimum, there isn't really a minimum, but you wouldn't want just two mothers coming along or a mother and a father coming along with two different children, right?
Okay.
You really want 10 plus.
Okay.
And there's ongoing membership contribution. Like I said, it was like a franchise. So in this country here in Australia, the churches charge between $6 and $8 per family per session. And
Okay.
so around about $2 of that comes back for all the resourcing we're providing.
Okay.
You, with four people on your team,
Hmm.
you can't have more than 15 families
Mm.
because you want a ratio of 1 to 4 so that you know you've got team there who can respond to pastoral care needs, who can pray with people, who can make the program of the session happen, who can build relationship.
Okay.
Now you can keep going. Like I
Yeah.
remember one in New Zealand used to be 120 families,
Mm.
but it takes a village to raise a child. And that sounds
Yeah.
like a city. So you need to actually have ways of creating villages. So during Eat Play Chat, they would make sure they had sort of like conversation centers so people
Yeah.
could actually go and they wouldn't be overwhelmed with 119 other people, and
Yeah.
adults. They could just go to that corner and they knew that the same 5 people were going to turn up there each week and they could build relationship.
Okay. Is there a scenario in which like a larger church might have more than one group?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
There's a church here or there's 2 churches here in Melbourne who have
Mm.
had Mainly Music running 3 days a week. And one of them
Okay.
had Mainly Music pre-COVID, Mainly Music
Mm.
running 3 days a week and Mainly Play running once a week. And one
Mm.
of those Mainly Music groups was specifically for Farsi speaking, so Persians, Farsi
Mm.
speaking families.
Oh
And
wow.
yeah, they can dance. Even the mothers. They eat good food too.
Okay. So, wow. Um. So, huh. Um. For like, if someone is going to plant a church, would is this the sort of thing that you would recommend to
Yes.
like help develop a ministry?
Yeah.
for young kids. Yeah.
Yes. Because the purpose of it is not to bring in the churched, it's to bring in those who are far from God.
Okay.
So in the content of the songs and in the content of the books,
Hmm.
so let's take Mainly Music first. There are up to 3 God songs or rhymes.
Mm.
In Mainly Play, there's one. Well, in your case, there would be 2 faith-based books per semester.
Okay. Mm.
So, but then woven through the session are some other faith-based comments. And
Mm.
at the end of the day, the only way we can reveal Jesus is through our personal relationship with him, through words and deed that are as a result of our relationship with
Yeah.
Jesus.
Okay. Um, that's a really cool ministry, I think. Yeah. Uh, how long were you like leading a group, and like how's your position changed over time?
Good question. So I was just doing all this voluntarily.
Yeah.
Mainly Music has been going 34 years. The original group still operates, and it's still one of their main church or community connections for their
Hmm.
church. So I was doing that, and 23 years ago, I had a change of jobs, and God backed me into a corner. And there was no money in Mainly Music at that stage. We didn't have Mainly Ministries. Mainly Ministries is a brand we started in 2020.
Okay.
And what a friend suggested, like back then, people were mostly charging $1 per family per session.
Hmm.
And they were getting great coffee and great things to eat at morning tea and a great morning out with their children. And so the
Hmm.
friend said, why don't you ask the groups to charge $2 with $1 coming back so that you could, so that a structure could, an administrational structure could be built, including me employed. But really, God had to get me, by the throat and put me in a corner because I'd always anticipated that Mainly Music would be my time would be the gift to the kingdom. There's just no way I could be doing that and having a full-time job now.
How do you how how do you approach your work with? Do you approach your work with like um, what sort of mindset do you bring to your work now that?
Well, it's very much my mission,
Mm.
and we pray with our staff about that we would treat every email, every piece of paper, every phone call
Mhm.
as a person who is needing to know that Jesus is really who motivates us. And
Mm.
whether that's the people running the Mainly Music, we don't know whether they've just received some bad news or whether they're in the what's termed the sandwich generation, where they're looking after aging parents and younger children. We
Mm.
don't know whether they've just come from a car accident or they're struggling to pay their mortgage. We need to reveal Jesus to them just as much as somebody who rings up and says, I'm new to the area of XYZ and I would like to know whether there's a Mainly Music there. Yeah, I am, you could term me a workaholic. I get a lot of personal satisfaction about
Mm.
doing this because it is done unto the Lord.
Where do you see this going in the future?
World domination, Elliott. World
Yeah.
domination.
Oh,
No, as I mentioned, our UK. No, I didn't mention this, but our UK operation is not financial yet. It was started middle of 2016, and then of course the pandemic has interrupted so much.
yeah.
The next place after that is Canada. We have 50% of the funding we need to get started in Canada, but we can't access it until we get the other 50%.
Mm.
So we've got to see growth and development there. So I'm working on that at the moment.
Yeah.
I wonder whether God is suggesting Singapore after that. We seem to
Okay.
be following Commonwealth countries.
Yeah.
around the place. There's a similarity, more so than a similarity with the US. There's a
Mm.
similarity of Commonwealth countries.
Yeah.
English is still a relatively sought after commodity.
Mm.
So in Lebanon, that's an English speaking group because it's for expats. So it's a lot of embassy families, and
Mm-hmm.
that group actually shut down over COVID. And the girl that established it originally said, now is not the right time to restart our Mainly Music. Now is absolutely the right time to restart Mainly Music. It's a
Mm.
country in chaos for its proximity to Syria and Israel, but
Yeah.
also because it has imploded politically, and
Mm.
they had that awful fertilizer bomb or fire that went off. She just sees the need for women because a lot of embassy staff have left, a lot of multinationals are pulling people back. So the
Mm-hmm.
people who are left there, particularly the mothers and their children, are more and more isolated. And she's like, this is the best time to start Mainly Music. It's the hardest and
Mm.
worst time, but
Yeah.
we are doing this.
Mm.
So who knows what God? Yes, I would like Mainly Music to keep on growing,
Uh-huh.
but it's got to be at the invitation of God. It can, the Holy Spirit has to be in all this. We're
Mm.
not just going to take take on the world without a way being prepared.
Yeah. Okay. Uh, you mentioned that you have like part of your funding raised for starting groups in Canada. What do you
Yes.
mean by that?
So we've got a very generous I suppose you'd call it a foundation. That might be the who has. We had to submit an application, and that included a budget. And
Mm.
they said, "Well, we don't want to be 100% of the shortfall you've identified. So you need to go out and find the other 50% to
Mm.
of the shortfall, so that you can get started."
And
So anyone listening that has access to that, pick me.
yeah. Uh, so what is the funding needed for in Canada?
Well, we're going to need to employ somebody because trying to resource the sales side, the
Mhm.
introduction side from here is pretty hard because of the time zones. And we're
Okay.
still too small in the UK to make that work as well. It's
Hmm.
very easy for us to connect with our people in the UK because our evening is their morning.
Hmm.
It's a lot harder with parts of Canada and
Right.
parts of the US. So we really need somebody in country. We
Okay.
need to have money to promote ourselves. We need money to establish some of the product we need that
Hmm.
forms the setup packs, that forms the birthday gifts. Children love Mainly Music tumblers, so little drinking glasses. We also publish our own Christmas and Easter books because we
Okay.
find that generally, if not exclusively, the Christian retail trade write to a mandate of presupposition. So they presuppose that the reader has some knowledge of faith,
Mhm. Yeah.
and they also don't apply the story. It's just like you're reading Hansel, the birth story of Jesus, and finish. But what does it actually mean to you, and
Mhm.
what relevance does it have to you as a family? So we write for a 3-year-old. We
Mhm.
write and illustrate our own books and publish them ourselves.
All right. Now, if anyone wants to find a group or be one of your guys' donors for Canada, where would they reach out to?
Okay, so thank you for asking that. The first thing I recommend them going on to mainlymusic.org, MAINLY, music.org. There is a map on there. It says join a group or find a group, something like that. I think it says both of those things in two different places. That
Mm.
takes you to a Google map and it's got little pins on it. So you can actually type in Aberdeen, Scotland or Pennsylvania. You probably won't find one in Pennsylvania. Uh, um, I know there's some. There are, Well, you can look later and you'll see where they are in the US. And then if they would like to even start one in their church or talk to us about church plants, I'm happy. I actually live on my own. My husband died 5 years ago. So I'm happy to talk through the night to people who are up on the other side of the world about mainly music, mainly play, and mainly babies, and how this could help them plant a church, connect with their local community. If they would like to explore what it might look like to help us get started in any of these other countries, shall I just tell you my personal email? Is that the easiest?
If you're okay putting it out there.
Oh,
Yeah.
totally. Joe Hood, JOHOOD, at Mainly Ministries. So that's MINISTRIES .org. Or even Joe Hood at mainlymusic.org. Both of those will get me.
Two quick questions for you before I go, before we wrap up here. But is there any books that you recommend for people who are in the position that you were back when you started Mainly Ministries?
Yes, good question. Depends whether you're wanting it from a theological point of view or whether you're wanting it from an organizational point of view. So America has a very cool guy called Patrick Lencioni, or Lencioni. He is a organizational management person. He lives in San Francisco. I've read absolutely everything he's written in terms of books. Really good stuff.
Okay.
If you are looking for mission and thinking about how would you frame this, there's a book called The Mission of God by Christopher Wright. I think he's an English guy. He might be American. The other thing, I would get my hands on anything Timothy Keller, the late Timothy Keller wrote.
Okay. Last question. Is there any questions that I should have asked you already?
I don't know. You've been pretty comprehensive.
All right.
What's my favorite ice cream flavor? Well, it's Hokey Pokey because you can only get that in New Zealand.
What's hokey pokey?
It's like, do you have crunchy bars? Do you have? There's another name for butterscotch. Is
Oh,
butterscotch sugar and golden syrup on? It's like that, but it's like these nuggets all through vanilla ice cream.
Huh. Yeah, we have something similar to that. It's like a toffee flavored ice cream.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. My wife actually asked me to ask you about banana milk. Is that an Australian thing? Banana milk?
Banana milk?
Yeah.
Yes, there is banana flavored milk in both Australia and New Zealand, actually. Yeah.
Is
I
it
don't know
good?
that you can get it. I don't think you can get it in bottles anymore. Like when my children were little, you used to be able to get it in bottles. I think mostly it's strawberry or chocolate.
Is it any good?
If you like sugar, yes.
Yeah. All right.
Elliott,
Well,
thank you. Thank you very much. This is very generous of you to spend this time with me and
thank
involve me on your podcast. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe, for coming on the podcast. Hope you have a blessed day. Okay.
You too. You too.